because the thing is, at the end of the day, I am just a creator, and I love thinking of ideas, and I love talking to people ideas, and like just like like, you know, just like all of that. I love that. And so it's like,
Sam, welcome to the show.
thank you. Thank you for having me.
How's your summer going? It does it feel like it's wrapping up, or?
You know what? I had the most random summer this year.
It looks from a social media's perspective well balanced.
Really? Thank you.
Well, as far as taking time for yourself and enjoying what the city has to offer, and giving glimpses of the behind the scenes to your entrepreneurial journey.
Thank you. I love that you said that, because I think that was a very intentional thing for me to keep it balanced this year.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it hasn't been as balanced.
No. My life has always been unbalanced, and I've just learned it recently.
Yeah.
And then it like shook me. I was like, okay, something's got to change.
Drawing a line.
Drawing a line.
Okay.
Yes.
So has it felt like a series of sprints rather than a long marathon?
Yes, my whole life is about sprinting and burning out. Like I look back on it and I'm just like, how did I do all that? Like I would cry on my way to going to events because I overcommitted to things.
Right.
Be crying on the phone, you know, and I'd be just like, oh my gosh, why did I do that? And then like I would literally like, okay, I have to get out of the car, and then I'd like wipe my tears, and I go and I'm like, hello,
this is on the way to
everyone.
the event.
Yes. And this happened so much. It would be like it would be like in meetings, like before meetings, I'd be like, oh my goodness, I feel so overwhelmed. And then I would calm myself down and be like, all right.
Does that come from being underprepared because you stretch yourself too thin?
No, I think this is the thing I'm starting to realize about myself that I don't think a lot of people like get from like first impressions is I don't know if it's like a social anxiety. It's like I get really stimulated when I'm around a lot of people, which really excites me. So when I'm in there, I'm like super present and everything. But I also realize like I also need a lot of time to recharge. Like
Absolutely. Well, it's like you're in that event. It's like, where do I start?
Yeah, exactly. Like I feel like when I'm in a place, I really give all of myself. Like you really like I'm really like present. I want to like talk. I want to get to know you. I want to like everything. And like it just takes so much out of me, especially when I'm doing like back to back to back, and then I don't recharge. I don't think about things. Like it's just
The last, and you'll appreciate this. The last time I felt that was at, Leanne. We have a mutual friend, Leanne.
Yes, I love.
So
Leanne.
She hosted a live episode, and I went there. She invited
I went there
me there
too.
Oh, I missed you then.
Oh my goodness.
I went there, and this is what I felt. I felt so out of place.
Wow.
I felt out of place, and it wasn't the biggest event.
Right.
But I felt like I had nothing, and this is completely unbiased, like wrong, but like I felt like because I wasn't the center of attention, I have nothing to offer.
Wow,
and
that's real.
that being said, it's like after the event was over, everyone was mingling, and there were a few people I would probably like, I'd love to pick their brain, but everyone in the room wanted to pick their brain.
Wow.
And if it happens, it happens, but I didn't feel like I wanted to wait in the line either to just get my 5 minutes with someone. Yeah, I don't know. And I went home, I told my fiance Justine that, I'm like, damn, like I haven't felt social anxiety in a while. And I told you the backstory of the picture behind you of the happy hour, and me being the host. It's easy because everyone knows you, right? And it's just like when no one knows you, it's it goes back to what it was like back at probably in high school, just like ooh, like
you're left to fend for yourself.
It does feel like that a little, and you have to kind of put on then, but
yes.
So it I don't know, it was a wake up call to me with like how I still can struggle with that.
I love that.
Back to you.
Yeah, no, thank you for sharing.
I guess, how long have you been in Chicago? You hail from the West Coast.
Yes.
I found you. I feel like this podcast is fed by Francis Almeida from Side Practice, whom at a point in time gave me a key to his coffee shop to host this podcast.
Oh my gosh, that's so amazing. He's great.
A lot of people have felt the grace of Francis. And after like learning about you, you've been side hustling for a very long time. Whether it's the food blog, the cookbook, the YouTube channel, Kitsch. I met, you're the second person I know that does Kitsch.
Oh, no way.
Tripping Billy does kitsch as well.
Yes.
But I guess take us back. It's usually a chronological retelling of how you came to be where you are. So maybe even dive into how, and I relate to this, like not feeling Chinese or American and using food as a vessel to cultivate some sense of identity for yourself. Self-titled melting pot for the cookbook, right? So take us back to where you first felt like you started to have that desire to cultivate a sense of identity.
That's good. That's a good question. I think, you know, what's really crazy? Whenever I talk to people and, you know, I realize how much your childhood has to do with everything that you do in this point of your life. And I think as a kid, right, you know, I never felt like I fit in within, like, you know, wherever I was at. I never felt like I fit in. I had to live with my grandmother for 3 years at one point, and I was always like feeling like, why did my parents like leave me? Or, you know, I had those like really weird feelings, and I was like in these social economic places where I technically shouldn't be there, and I stuck out like a sore thumb because I wasn't meant to be there, but somehow by the grace, like literally grace, that I'm in these places, right? And so I always felt like, you know, I didn't fit in. People definitely let me know I didn't fit in. And I was always like, okay, what the heck, you know? And so that started my journey. Like as a kid, I knew startly I didn't fit in. I also really struggled with focusing in the traditional classroom setting. So I remember stark, you know, moments where I was in classroom and I would be looking at the teacher and I just see her yapping away and talking about random things. And I'd be like daydreaming about life, about who I wanted to do, what I wanted to do.
So it wasn't interesting?
It wasn't interesting. And I think that's one thing I realized as in my adult life. If something doesn't interest me, I'm going to fail miserably, you know? And I think, anyways, yeah, so I didn't do well, and I didn't do well. In fact, in 5th grade, I almost got left behind. My teacher told me in the mid-semester,
like you'd have to redo it.
Yeah, she told my dad, and my dad's like, "Oh hell no, you're not gonna like not do this." So he like ended up like, and my parents were the most latchkey Asian parents I've ever met.
Okay.
You know, I was always like out and about doing my own thing.
A lot of freedom.
I taught myself a lot about like my education system outside of school, I guess, was TV, like daytime television.
Wow.
And I like remember, because I didn't fit in.
About culture and how people interact.
Like all the things adults get to do, you know, like even the bad things, you know. I remember I was like, I had like
cops, like a lot of cops.
Not like cops.
The show cops.
Yeah, I would watch a lot of like
Springer.
Yes, I watched Jerry Springer, and I have a really like funny story, but I don't even know if it's like PG to talk about it. I remember one girl offended me in elementary school, and I called her a trailer trash whore because I was like, and I remember like, you know, and teachers reprimanded me because I went to a cookie cutter elementary school. I would, you know, and they were just like so shocked, like, who is this chick? Why does she say the most why does she say the most outlandish things, you know? And I recognize now that I was just fending for myself. I was fending for myself. I didn't have a voice yet, and I really wanted, like, there was part of me that knew, I knew that I just didn't belong, but that doesn't mean that was my place or those are my peoples, you know? And I felt that strongly within myself. So anyways, I did really bad in like school, and then in high school I was just all about like, I want to have a good time, you know, meet a lot of people, underage clubs and everything. I was a club promoter at 16. So I was out there, you know, and I think I always say that I lived these experiences that were meant for adults, but I was still young.
This is in the West Coast?
Yes. But I had I'm young, I'm developing. And so there was a lot of situations I got myself into, and I'm like, okay, I don't know how to handle this. So I learned a lot. And so like, I think at that age, I learned about people. I learned about what people, you know, like how your perspective can be starkly different from somebody else. And so I did that. And then.
Did you have a mentor that you looked up to at the time?
No, I just like, no, maybe the club promoters that were like above me and making actual like good money off of it. But I didn't. I don't think I had anybody I truly looked up to. I think
at that point, did you eventually figure out why you said you didn't live with your parents for 3 years?
Yeah, I mean, I did understand it. Like, my grandmother thought she could provide a better life for us.
Oh.
And so, like, she,
So are you near though? Like you just don't live with them, or like?
I would go back home on the weekends.
Oh wow.
So I would go home on the weekends, and for 3 years I did this where my parents would drop me off. My mom would stay there like once a week.
Okay.
And
what was that? What's the distance?
It was like I guess it's like a half an hour drive.
Oh, that's not bad.
It wasn't bad. It wasn't bad, but it was this feeling of like
that would make me question, like, wait, you're so close. Like, why can't we all live together, you know?
Yeah, I think about that too sometimes. I'm just like, yeah, why was that whole situation? But I also think my parents didn't have that bandwidth to do like the shuffling. And, I also think like it was one of those things where like my grandmother was so regimented. She was the typical Asian tiger mom,
wow.
but I got that in my grandmother. Didn't get it from my parents, got it from my grand. And I think it's also like, I think if my grandmother had a specific parenting style that she saw from my brother and I, that she didn't see that my parents had.
Is your brother
us.
older or younger?
Older.
He's older. Okay.
Yes.
I wonder if she saw like a laissez-faire type of parenting and was like, I need to step in here.
Yes,
really?
That's exactly what happened, because, I just remember as a kid, and this is how I learned a lot about people, is my mom was really heavily involved in church. And so I would be dropped off at random people's houses because it's like part of the community. And my mom would know so many people. We would help a lot of people. And so like I was very used to like just like being around like people going through all sorts of things, people who were like single mothers, people who are trying to figure things out. And so like I kind of was just like thrown in, and I would be like in these like group of kids that I never knew. My mom's like, those are gonna be your friends, and then I'll just go in there and be like, hi, and like have to like just like figure it out. And like sometimes it was really like dramatic because sometimes people are mean, sometimes you get in little fights, and things like that. And so I remember like growing up, I had this expectation of me that I had to be always play nice, but there's part of me that's also very sassy, and there's part of me that's like, no, they're not going to do that to me. So I think there's always like battling the two, good girl, and like battling what like I truly wanted to like fight for. Yeah.
And so at what point did you keep going with your identity then?
Yes.
Yeah, we took a detour into parenting.
Yes. I think what happened was, and I lived when I went back to live with my parents, I lived in a predominantly like white neighborhood. Everybody was pretty much like white. There was like, a good like maybe 10% Asian, actually maybe 15 or so, but they were not like, those parents would never let them hang out with me because it's just like the way that
because you were not Asian enough, or
I don't know if it's Asian enough. It's more of like I wasn't interested. Like it was very clear I was not going to the after school programs. The way that I dress, I also was very like, because like I said, I grew up watching TV. Role models maybe were like music video girls. So I remember wearing like crop tops, wearing high heels. Even I remember I went to camp one year. I literally wore high heels to a camping ground because I thought it was the dopest thing ever. And it's like the weirdest thing. I see myself like just like really wanting to figure who I was.
Your fits on your cooking channel are A1.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah. I think that's a thing I'm trying to work in my like this year in my life is like just really fully expressing how I want to show up in this world. And so even as a kid, I really wanted to do that. And then
did you feel like you missed out by not having some type of Asian experience with?
No, because deeply I am so Asian at the same time. Oh. I speak Cantonese. I am fluent.
Oh, shit.
Are you?
I don't.
Okay. I speak Cantonese fluent. And then that's why I think now as I'm getting older, I'm like, man, why did people make me feel like I wasn't Asian enough or whatever? And I realized it's just the way I was raised, but I am deeply Cantonese all day, every day.
Okay.
Like that's how I grew up. I spoke it. I cook the food. Okay. I'm so part of it. I watched this thing called TVB, which is where like if you go to anybody who's like your mom or dad's house, like they would watch TVB as these series and stuff. And I learned the culture through that as well. So I would say like I truly feel like inside I felt like I was always like very Chinese.
Have you seen Always Be My Maybe?
Always Be My Baby. I think I saw
Be My Maybe with Ali Wong.
Yes, I think
Randall
so.
Park.
Yes, I did see that.
It was in San Francisco as well. They grew up in San Francisco, and they were neighbors. They were best friends growing up, and then they hooked up in high school, and it got awkward, and then they came back as adults. But that similarly, she was a latchkey kid, and she learned through food. I guess learned about life and culture and identity through food. So it sounds like you're coming to terms with who you are, and you're still developing it. When did food begin? Yeah, when did that incorporated into it?
Yes. So I always say there's two types of people. There's people who plan their food around their activities, and there are people who plan their activities around their food. I guess you can tell who I was, because food was at the heart of my family. Every activity we done, I cannot remember if we didn't, there was never we're gonna do this activity. It's we're gonna do this food, and whatever happens around that we'll do. So that is how I grew up. Food is at the center of everything that we do.
Whether it was with your grandmother, and then when you moved back with your parents, was there a lot of cooking together or eating together at least?
No, and that's the funniest thing, because I actually do write about it in my book. So my immediate family, we were all just such characters. We all did our own thing, and my mom hated cooking, by the way. Wow. She didn't like cooking, and she cooked things really bland, and I joke with her all the time. She's like, yeah, you know what, I'm so sorry, I realize now how bland I actually am in cooking. And so it's so funny that we talk about that, because I think cooking skipped a generation, but for me, what I really wanted was I wanted to come home to a house with a meal where everybody's sitting and everybody's talking about what their day was like, and I just didn't get that. And so I think that's one of the reasons why I started getting into food, was because I really wanted to have those experiences. And so I remember starting to cook Thanksgiving dinner at, I think it was 14 or 15. I started
what?
I just went, and I was like, man.
What'd you cook? What was the spread?
I made a turkey. I made everything. I actually made everything, and I made it raw. It's in my book. I made it raw. And one thing I learned is my family doesn't really like turkey because it's a little dry. So over the years, I've learned that being, a blend of both cultures is you got to have some dark meat, or you got to have a lot of sauce. And most of the times I used to get really annoyed because my grandmother would bring the siu-ap, which is the duck and the barbecue porks and stuff, and supplement of my thing. And I'd be like, yeah, it's not going to my Martha Stewart.
Have you been to Sunwa?
No, I have not, but I need to
You've
go.
You've heard of it, though. Okay. All right.
I've seen it, and I definitely have to go there. But yeah, she influenced, she would put all the food. Yeah. She would, so we really did the East meets West. And then it became a tradition in my household where every year I would cook Thanksgiving dinner. My grandmother would buy the roast pork and, all the other stuff. And we would just really, for almost a decade, do that. Oh, okay. So I realized the power of, bringing people through food together.
Yeah. And as well as through the joy that it brought you, maybe carving out your own niche with kind of combining both worlds. And I guess it's learning to be okay with not feeling too Asian or not feeling too American.
Yeah.
But it's okay to be both.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I stand by that 100% because I feel you can rep it however you want to rep it. I am, I'm fully Cantonese. I'll speak it when I want to speak it. I'll say the bad words, I love, it's part of me, and I think it's also I never judge someone if they're more Asian or not. That's really damaging, I feel like. Yeah. Because I've been in that situation where a family would look at me like, you're not going to hang out with them. One, first of all, they're not really Chinese. And two, they're a bad influence. So I've been very cognizant of not trying to do that to other folks.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So at this point, are we nearing college or where are we at? Where are we at with this? I know. Okay. So let me actually bring this full circle. So it's funny because I've always loved cooking. I used to stay home. I a lot of times I would just pretend to be sick and cook while my parents were gone. And then what happened was I was always partying, and my friends would always be eating my hangover, late night munchy meals. And everybody's like, damn, you cook so good. I would make ribs in the middle of the night, make pies, and people were like, damn, you really should do something about it. And I'm like, yeah, what should I do? And I never applied to college because I just at that point I was like, I'm not smart like that. So
I need to figure, like, I don't know what to do, but I'm also like,
right.
and I also think it was a lot of pride in that moment. Yeah.
And what did your parents think or grandmother think?
Oh, a lot of things. A lot of things. My grandmother is so funny. My grandmother and my uncle, I remember them like really like being like, no, like they show me facts about people who work in the kitchens, kind of like how it's really hard.
Now,
It's really difficult.
Did they ever work in a kitchen?
No,
Okay.
never.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. My grandmother is actually from China.
Are you first gen or are your parents first gen?
So I think that's a really hard thing to say because I believe that I'm a first gen.
I think being born here makes you a gen, you know, like,
Yes.
So who was born here?
So I was born here.
Okay.
But this is where it gets tricky, right? Because my dad came here when he was in college years.
So he knows it enough.
Blend.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I get a blend of both, but we are rooted like Chinese folks at home, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But anyways, let me go back to the whole like school thing. So because all my friends are like, wow, you like cook so great and you make the best munchies, you know, food. And I'm like, yeah. And I remember, I think someone, and I don't remember who exactly, was like, you should go to culinary school. And it was like this light bulb that went up. I was like, yeah, I'm going to do culinary school. Like, I'm going to, you know, well, I also was like, I didn't feel like I was actually going to do well in actual school. So I was like, all right, let me do that. So I went to culinary school.
Out there?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I went to culinary school and I remember them having an essay before you go to culinary school. And they're like, why do you want to go to culinary school? And I said the most boldest shit ever. I was like, one, I'm going to revolutionize cafeteria food one day. I don't know why I thought
What was your experience with cafeteria food?
Terrible.
What did they serve?
Like, you know, like the soft pizza, the bean burritos that were mushy, like all this food that was just, you know, bad. You know, I started packing my lunch when I was in 4th grade myself because I was like, yo, mom, give me like $20 and I'm going to go to the store and I'm going to make my own lunch and everything. Because I was like sick of this. I was like, man. I
love that.
You know?
I'm sure they love that too. That's that essay.
You know what? I'm sure, but now that I know, I think a lot of people get into culinary school. So I think it's a money thing. It's a money thing. So I don't know if I needed to do that, but it was actually, to me, when I look back on it, I'm just like, damn, I'm pretty like.
But it's caring enough to not lie on your essay.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I think that's the thing. It's like
drawing from personal experiences.
And like, it's just funny because I think that's how I've always been. If you ask all my friends that grew up with me, I would always be the extra. No, I would be so extra. Like, people call me extra. Like, if I go to the club, I would be really extra. The way that I dress, it was very extra. The way that I talk was very extra. And it's like, you know, me writing this like essay, like saying I'm going to revolutionize cafeteria food and that I'm going to have my own cooking show. I know, exactly. They're like, who is this girl? And they're like, and I wrote, I'm going to have a cooking show on Food Network. So I'm just like, I just think like everybody who probably read that was like, 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 who is this chick? Like, you know, simmer down a little bit. So anyways, I went to culinary school. Did it for a year, and that was life-changing for me for 2 reasons. One, I realized I'm not dumb. I'm just a hands-on learner.
Aww.
I'm a hands-on learner.
We get that in the EMT class too. People that didn't do well in traditional school, but like cared so much about this stuff that they excelled.
See, you know what? I think that's the thing, you know, like.
It's taste testing the waters before you dive into the deep end. And by deep end, I mean, I think college, but college isn't for everyone, right?
It isn't for everyone. I think, but now it's okay to be like that. You know, there's more avenues for that. But before, it's like, even if you know you want to do something totally different, you got to go to college first. Like that was the rhetoric we had.
Rhetoric, the culture, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, the trades weren't talked about.
No, not at all. And it wasn't it wasn't like one of those things where it's like you can make a sustainable living. It's really hard for people. And, you know, there was like 1 or 2, like if you're like electrician or if you're a plumber, yes, you'll make the money, you know, like afterwards. But like everything else, it wasn't advertised. So I was like, you know, so I learned I was a hands-on learner. Okay. And became an overachiever. And then I learned that my study, it's the way that the way that my brain was always disorganized, first of all. And it still is. That's why I talk super fast.
I noticed that.
You know, I know. And I'm like, you're like complete opposite of me.
Only because people have noticed how slow I talk.
But I love that. It calms me down. You know what I mean? I strive to be like you. But yeah.
You know, and one of the last guests, Courtney, she would probably pause for 5 seconds before responding.
Really?
To really think 2 to 3 times, I'm sure, if I were to guess about what she was about to say.
See, this is the craziest thing. Like I've been really going to deep dive about people's brains and how people think, because for the longest time I was like, doesn't everybody think like this? Having inner monologues, walking on the street, talking to themselves. Like, doesn't everyone's mind racing at 2 a.m. with a crazy idea, and then you just get good on the laptop? Like, I thought, like, I'm just like, it's just one of those things.
And if I were to guess, that's probably your kind of definition of even recharging. Like, but it's by yourself.
Yeah. Because I have random rituals that I do that is like very
It's not
true.
draining.
It's not, because I think one thing I've learned a lot is I've been masking a lot. On the offset, I can manage like a person who's very organized, can articulate themselves and whatnot. But in my mind, it is a crazy thing up there, and I actually, I'm happy to talk about these things because it really bothered me.
No, I'm sure plenty of people relate to that.
Yeah.
So did you talk, what was the second thing that you learned from?
Oh yeah, that,
You're good with your hands and...
I'm good with my hands, and I had to learn study habits.
Oh.
And so I learned a lot of different ways to study.
Okay.
That was going to be like successful for myself. So then I went back to community college.
Oh.
Went back to community college. That gave me the confidence to go back to community
simultaneously
college.
You dropped out of culinary.
Yeah, I left the culinary school.
What felt like you were ready to leave, or it wasn't for you anymore?
Because I was working at a newspaper firm, and I was creating global menus for the employees. And
what does that mean, global menus?
So like I was just coming up with like new global menus. Like we would do Mediterranean food, we'd do Asian food. I would just
that the employees would eat.
Yeah. So I created that. Yeah.
That's a role.
Yeah.
That's a role?
Yeah, because one of my really good friends, her dad randomly just bought this company at the newspaper firm, and he just bought it. And at one point, he's like, "I think I'm gonna turn this into something." And so he knew I was going to culinary school, and I would come over and cook all this random shit all the time. He was like, "Sam, you want to get a job or what?"
That is amazing.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Because that reminds me of the essay you wrote.
I didn't even think about that. Oh my gosh, yeah. I see a lot of things that are like little pebbles in my life later, like, I don't like to always use the word manifest, because I think it's really hard for people if they don't like think of manifesting, but like I think of it like, you plant seeds.
Right, right.
Yeah.
That's wild. So what did you feel like you needed to do in community college?
So I ended up community college because I realized like I was actually really scared to go back to school because it was a pride issue for me. Like, sure. I felt like, I was trying to prove these teachers wrong. Like, like I don't care that I'm not doing well in school, but, generally I actually do care. I actually wanted to make something out of myself. And so I ended up going to community college. I had to take 2 remedial English class and math class before I can even take that one class that transferred out, by the way.
What?
And
why? Because your high school credits didn't transfer over, or what?
No,
happened?
because I took a placement test and I scored so low
wow.
that I had to literally do that. And that's where I was at. And it was like the most humble.
And you swallowed your pride and you
Absolutely.
Still did it?
I like, it was my slice of humble pie in life. Like, I realized like, damn, like, you're not shit, Sam. Like, you're not, like, I told myself, like, you're not shit. But you know what? Like, you have the opportunity to try. So I was like 21 and everybody else was just coming into college. So I was like 18-year-old folks. But I will say I was that kid who's like always like on top of my stuff, because I realized like, and I'm that type of person, like I have to go through really tough shit, or like I have to really like my mom will always nag me. She's like, why don't you learn? And I'm just like, you know what? Until I fall flat on my face and I learn, you don't have to tell me anything. I will do it, and I will do it wholeheartedly. And so that's what happened. I did that, and I embraced it so much. And it was like the best time in my life where I was like, you know what? Like, it really humbled me, because before I was always like thinking I was like, I was going to be something or whatever. But in reality, it's like, I'm not going to be something, because I can't even do the bare minimum. And that's what it showed me. And it also gave me compassion for like, compassion for other folks that, like also are going through that phase of like, like
I guess you never know how hard someone
yeah,
has it,
you never know how hard it is. And now I'm like, you know, a decade later being like, okay, I struggled with so much other stuff and not like, you know, with my brain and organizing and all these different things. And so like now I'm like, oh my goodness, like, man, you really don't know what someone's going through. You really don't know like why it's such a struggle for them in this arena that comes naturally easy to yourself, but it doesn't come naturally for someone else. Anyways.
How did you find the will to persevere then after the slice of humble pie?
Because I think I was like so.
Was there an end goal? Was there a vision that you like were really attached to that you wanted to like do no matter what, like whatever you got to do?
I think it was always like this feeling of like, if I can figure this thing out, I could figure it out for a lot of people too. And I could, you know, if I could inspire myself, I can inspire a lot of people too. Cause I know where I started off, and that's why I always like laugh. And when people are like, you know what, how do I do this? I'm like, trust me, if I told you where I started from, you could do this too. And I love talking about that too. Because that's where I started, you know, like very like literally there. And that was a turning point for my life. Yeah. Okay.
So then, and were there any other courses that stuck out in community college?
Yeah, I loved communication.
Oh.
I loved communication. I loved storytelling. I was like, I sucked at writing, and I was learning how to like put my the class that I was in, it was like this class where you're learning writing proper sentences. And that's an insecurity of mine even till this day.
Sure.
Because like even in professional settings, I'm just like, I know that sounds hella shitty, but you know, that is my best foot forward. I remember my brother, because he was an English major, and he's like, you know what, I'm not gonna lie, you when he used to like correct my shit, he'd be like, you know what, you write like you're a first grader. I went here and then I did this and then I did that.
Siblings are the best.
Yeah, exactly. You know, and so where am I going? See, this is how I'm going.
The writing course.
Yes.
Were you maybe gaining a voice or gaining, right? Is that what it is?
Yes. And then I remember we did presentations once on like documentaries, and I did one about food. And I remember in that moment when I got up there and I started talking about it, I was like, I feel it. I'm gonna be talking about food in some shape or form or capacity. I'm going to be telling storytelling through food. I don't know what it is. So I completely switched my major from business to comms. And that's what I ended up doing. Yeah.
So then did you finish? Did you go to another university, or what happened?
Yeah. So I ended up going to a university. I finished that in 2 years, and then I went to grad school, which this is where it comes full circle for the Asian experience, is because in grad school, you know, I went there in 2015. I started the program in 2015. I went to Asia. So part of the program was you had to go to China for a year, and you would do your research, and you would do your thesis, and you would teach all in one program. And so I ended up going to China.
Got a master's degree in communications?
No, that was in international studies.
That makes sense.
Yeah, it was in international studies.
But that's very broad. In what sense? Like,
so my concentration was in business. So we would take business classes too at the same time. But it was, you know, international studies because we were planted right in Asia.
Was that your first time there?
It wasn't my first time, but it was so different from what I thought, because I thought I was going to thrive, because I was like, I'm Chinese. Yeah. There's no way. And I learned that in China, you know, there's a lot of different types of, you know, regions and provinces, and, you know, food was definitely different.
Slice of humble pie.
Honestly, my life is all about, you know, every time I think I'm on the hot shit, like something happens, I'm like, yeah, damn, okay. You know, so
delusional confidence.
You know what? I'm working on it.
Well, sometimes you need that to move forward.
Yeah.
And it might hit you back a few notches, and then you'll still keep moving forward, though.
Yeah. No. Yeah. I think, I don't know where I get these like spurts of like energy. And that's why I always talk about, I have really high highs and really low lows.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's funny. My parents are like probably in the middle of the road of like very even keeled. So like in every sense of the word, from personality wise, like in the sense of like there's never any arguments, but there's also like my first interaction with the word I love you or physical touch came through friends.
Really?
And relationships, and that you know, and that's fine. Some people don't need any of that other stuff. And, you know, there's a point where I was like trying to force it on them. Like, why aren't you like this? Like,
I had that moment
they're the
too.
way they are. It's just like, it is okay. It's whatever. And it's learning to love that no matter what. But, sorry, go back. Yeah,
no.
I
love that. I had that moment too.
Yeah.
I really did. And that it's actually after Asia. Because I remember, you know, like I would actually get really annoyed with like the slurping.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I got really annoyed with the slurping. And it wasn't because I was annoyed with the slurping. I didn't even realize it was a slurping. What happened was I went to college. And I remember I was in my dorm room. And we had these quads. And a girl was talking like smack about like how she was so annoyed that I would smack all the time. And I was like, yo, I heard this. And it was this thing where I was like, you know, in that moment, I was like, damn, like, I think... I was like, I didn't even realize that. How, like, and I was like, then I became hyper focused on it. And so when I go home, like, why are my parents smacking? Why are they like slurping and things? And I remember one time I gave my dad like the meanest like eyes. And honestly, it's my dad's birthday, but he passed away this year.
Holy shit.
So it's like crazy how, it's crazy how like, you know, I think a lot of...
It's a different culture.
It's a different culture, but
and you coming to respect that and appreciate it for what it was. And here's the thing, though. It wasn't until your friend or, you know, your dorm mate...
Pointed it out.
Quadmate pointed it out.
Yes.
And and to your point, I've pointed it out to my fraternity brother, who's... I don't know if he still does it to this day, but, like, we called him out. He, like, would... eat with his mouth open and smacking, and we're like, where do you think you are? Like, we are all eating at this table, and what are you doing?
Like,
and
you're ruining it for everybody.
I've never been to China, and my parents don't really do that either, so I never was like, I didn't know that was someone else's culture.
It's so offensive to people.
Yeah, but it's not until it is, right?
Yeah. and I felt so bad. Like, now I look back on it, I'm like, man, like, that was a moment that, but you know, now when, you know, even afterwards, like, I came full circle moment, because when I went to China, I was like, damn, like, everybody slurps.
Everyone does it.
Everybody does it.
So here's the thing. Did your dad say anything when you brought it up?
No, I think my dad was the type of person who wouldn't say anything, but I'm sure in some ways that it could have hit him deeply.
I don't think anyone else might have brought it up to him. Like, in his other circles. Like, right?
But I gave him that look one time, and I remember that feeling, and I was just like, damn. And I remember, like, obviously when I came back from China, I was just like, you know, it's like, it's whatever, you know, it's like it was a different thing. I was like accepting that is how my family is raised. That is how they are. It is what it is. You know, there's so much good shit I could take from that too.
Good for you.
You know, and there's so much good stuff that I get to take from the Western culture, and I'm the best of both worlds, baby. You know. So I you know, but I think about it and I'm like, you know what, like, if anything, I look back on it and I'm like, now I realize, like, you know what, like, when you only have a certain time with your family, and I worked in senior care later on, which I can talk about that later.
What?
Which
through food or?
Yes, I ended up doing a little through. Yes, actually, that's how I got my foot in the door. But I learned the most powerful lesson in senior care.
Okay.
But yeah, it's this because I went to China, I learned,
gaining
like,
an appreciation.
I gained an appreciation, and I realized, like, those are the people that it came from. Like, it was like dope. Like, yeah. Like, because you know what was really crazy was that I remember I would watch people, like, with a bike, with, like, this wagon looking thing, and they were carrying like 4 couches stacked up upon each other. And you know what? I remember in that moment when I saw someone riding that bike one day, and I was like, that flashed in my mind. Like, that is the same brain that you have, that you can think of resources and come up with the most, like you can be you are a scrappy person. Like, it literally hit me. Like, I'm a scrappy person. So, like, every time I think about starting something new or whatever, I'm like, how do I make this happen? Where everybody's saying it takes this much money, this much resources, this much team members. How do I take that and really recreate it in a way that is, like, actually going to be my competitive edge? And so I remember that was such a full circle moment that I was like, I come from that long line of creative thinking.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah.
And here's the thing. They probably don't even acknowledge it like that.
They don't.
Right?
And this is one thing I've learned is that my mom was the one who always told me, like, you know what, even when I was a kid, she's like, you're creative. Because I would sit in my room all day for like 12 hours. Mom was like, you have to eat. I'd be like, no, I'm trying to, like, get my ideas or whatever. It's like, I just couldn't get out of it. But my mom always told me, she's like, you know what? you are going to thrive because of your ideas and your creativity. That's what my mom told me. But I failed to ever understand it because I never saw other people do it. I didn't value the creativity in me. So this is the first time in my life, in the last like 2 years of my life, where I really
like
tried
taking care of yourself in order for everything else to thrive.
Yes, but also valuing those ideas and stop second guessing it. Stop thinking about it so much and just like going with it. Yeah.
I feel you.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I love
it. Thank you.
So how remind me how long you spent there?
A whole year.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did it fly by, or would you go back? Like,
yeah,
I've never been. My parents are from Burma, but they're Chinese.
Burma. Okay, so
their parents immigrated from China to Burma.
Okay.
I honestly didn't know until I took a DNA test. I'm like 100% Chinese. Like, where did this come from? But it all makes.
So you always identify as being Burmese.
Burmese.
Yeah,
Burmese. Yeah, they didn't speak Chinese. They spoke Burmese and Burmese and English, and I didn't know until probably like in my mid-20s. Yeah.
That is like, then that must have been like so eye-opening. Like, damn, I want to know everything about this.
It almost at the beginning, it was like almost a letdown. I was like, I thought I was Burmese.
Right.
And it's like, well,
so much of your identity was.
What's wrong with being Chinese? It is what it is, right? So, it's like similar to you. It wasn't as profound, but learning to appreciate the struggle that they had to go through, and even if they're not self-aware of everything, right, they might not articulate it as well, but we can still appreciate everything they had to go through to give us the opportunities that we can have.
Absolutely. I'm very like honestly so grateful for like my grandparents, everybody before me.
And all you can do is take the virtues from them, stack it, and pay it forward.
Oh, absolutely. Like it is wild that you say like paying it forward and taking their legacy, because my grandfather passed away in 2020. My grandma passed away in 2021.
That is rough.
My dad passed away in 2022. But I always thought, and up until that point, I never actually lost someone in my life. Okay. So it was like this consecutive years of losing people in my life. And I always thought it was going to hit me so much harder, like where it would be like, that point where you just can't physically do anything. But it was crazy because every time someone left, I felt like they were giving me like a new energy, or like a new I felt so strong. Like my grandmother, because when I came to Chicago and really solidified and coming to Chicago, that was like the week my grandmother passed.
Wow.
I felt that, like, you know what? Because my cousin told me, she's like, all grandma ever wanted for you was for you to live the life you really wanted. Because my grandmother's also very like strong, like a person that like really crafted her own path. And I think like she saw that in me, but she also wanted me to slow down and everything. But she just wanted me to be happy. And so when I heard that, it was like, boom.
I'm going. This is for you, Grandma.
Boom. Literally. So, so I just constantly feel like even when my dad passed, I felt like, you know what? Like everything that he has taught me, I'm going to be that and keep walking in. Every day, if he sees me being happy and enjoying my life, then that means everything to me.
How powerful these feelings are only there. They're there because of the meaningful experiences you had with them. So from my perspective, I couldn't speak, and now that I'm looking back, like my grandmother in San Francisco spoke Chinese, and on my dad's side, they lived in Burma, but I never was able to communicate with them. So I didn't have meaningful relationships other than a smile here and a hello there. And when they pass, it doesn't hit you as hard, right? And it's like taking the time to ask your parents what were they like, and maybe they can translate as much as possible. But so like now that I've met Justine's grandparents, they speak fluent English, and I'm like, I can speak and communicate with someone of that generation. And that was one of my favorite parts of being an EMT, is like you work with old people all the time, right? So it's just like, what was it like? What do you like? Like, what was it like when you were younger? And it's like you get to just pick their brain and see how they're appreciating the later years of their life as it's kind of nearing the end. And like, instead of, don't regret anything. So do everything you want to do.
No regrets, no YOLO.
We only YOLO once.
Yeah, I mean, and that is kind of like what I was saying. Like I worked in senior care.
Yeah. So tell me more. How did you got there through food?
Yeah. So I came out of, China, came back. And I think I realized in China, because there's a lot of elderly population, they're really like, you see them all the time. They're just hanging on their own. And you see that they were really overlooked. And I remember just walking by, just like having a smile on my face, doing my thing, you know? Yeah. And I just remember their faces would light up. And I'm like, wow, like there's something here. There is like, and there was also in China, like there was this there was like intergenerational living together.
Okay.
And I saw that was pretty cool because I was like, I thought that was really cool how people honor their elderly.
Yeah.
And I realized like I've always had an affinity with my grandparents. And I always realized like I had an affinity with the elderly all the time. My mom would take me to the senior homes to sing. I'm not a great singer, by the way. My mom, it's just like, one of those things where she's just rounding people up, like, we got to do this. And she would round kids up. So I wasn't good, but I would just like be passing things. And I remember at one time when I was a kid, we went to someone who was like dying in like the hostel section of the hospital. And I remember just like holding an old man's hand, elderly man. When he was like about to die. And I was like, sir, like, just like smiling at him, and this is the thing. That's why I noticed I had an affinity for it, right? Because not everyone would just reach out their hand and just hold someone's hand, and I just realized the faces that they would give me was like, it meant everything to them. And it meant so little for me. Like, not that it meant so little. It meant a lot to me too, but it was not a lot for me.
Them.
Yeah, it was not a lot for me to give, but it meant everything for them. And so then that made me realize.
I think they have so much to give, and they're lacking the people to give it to.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they just want, and they're at that place in their life. They want to like, they've done so many great things in their life. They have, and it's like, they like, at least in America, and I worked in senior care industry for 2 years, actually. You see, there's actually a really alarming rate of depression in seniors that a lot of people don't know. Is like, it was a huge number. I don't like to quote things because I always get it wrong, but it was a huge number, and it was really eye-opening to me to know that. And then I also recognized, it's like, well, I love food. Can I one day create something within food in the senior care? Because they were also saying like baby boomers are like there's going to be a huge need for senior care. So I saw that as an opportunity. I was like, all right, let me get into senior care any means necessary. And I became a restaurant manager of like a fine dining restaurant at a senior care living.
Within the senior care.
Yes.
That's fancy.
Yes, very fancy. We were eating lobster. We were
not many nursing homes or assisted living places I would take my parents to.
Yes, but it's like a 10 grand situation.
Yeah.
It's a little pricey, but but I think during that time, and then I did it for 2 years. I worked in like a normal senior care facility, like the fine dining one, and then I went to a nonprofit senior care place where it was like all Chinese folks. So then there was like 4 dialects going on.
Wow.
And it was there. I was like, and I remember towards the last like 6 months of it, I was like, I don't know why I ended up here. I was very frustrated myself. I was around people who were in tech, who were making these like big figure money. And I'm like, I'm here like trying to be mission driven and whatnot. And like, I don't know if this is actually what I want to do. And it was really hard for me to be like, Sam, are you really going to like leave this situation? Like, and then towards the end, I remember a lot of people passed away. It was like during this time, it was like a lot of people passed away. And I was like, what am I supposed to be learning from this? And I remember walking one day, and it was like this aha moment. I was like, this is why you were supposed to be here. And I think I learned the gift of life, or the realization at the end of life. And that at the end of life, only 2 things matter. One, did you do right to other people? That's your loved ones, people in your life, those big decisions. Did you regret not saying something? Did you not get something off your chest? Did you do right by people? Like, did you did you figure out like, it was like one of those things where I was like, wow, like, doing right by people is really important. Doing right and loving those people around you with like really like, and I don't even like using the word unconditional because I'm really big about boundary setting too nowadays. And I think in Asian cultures, it's really hard to love people without, having all of yourself like depleted too. But I think like, you know, I learned that you should, number one lesson is, you know, do right by people, and do right by yourself to other people. And then the second one is, did you do yourself right? Because that means, did you have like a YOLO mindset? Did you like literally go and do everything you said you were going to set out to do? Right. Did you actually create impact? Did you like make promises to yourself that you didn't keep, or did you keep it? And it's all about growth. And so I remember after having that, I was like, thank God, like that was why I was here, to learn this. And I think that really like struck me. Like everything I've done after that was always about those, like comparing those things. Like, am I doing right to other people? Am I doing right to myself? Am I giving myself a fair chance? Am I betting on myself? You know? And so I think that really was another like pivotal point in my life.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Unfortunately, I think it's a lesson learned when you do lose someone close to you. But if I mean, thanks to your mom spending time with, you know, people of that generation, most people don't get that opportunity. So it doesn't have to be family, but someone you've grown close to and you see them dying or nearing that, it's just like, hopefully it instills an appreciation for what you have. Yeah, no, 100%. And what did you do afterwards? So as far as like, at the end of the 2 years? Yeah, I ended up finding another job. And at the time... Because it's okay to want money. Yeah, no, totally. And I actually am... I love this topic, by the way, but just, you know, I am in a totally different place, because I came from, like, I was born with, I always thought my mom was an angel, because she's always like, not prior. She's like, don't worry about money. That money is not everything. It's about doing good to other people. So then when I was like, I didn't have money, I was like, okay, mom, like, this is not it. Right. So I ended up getting another job, and then I also, at the same time while I was working that job, I ended up being able to work on my cookbook. So I had this idea that I'm going to write a cookbook, and it's going to mirror a lot like chicken noodle soup. But it's going to be about my Asian American experiences. I really wanted to overnight a copy from Target, but the links are broken. Is it really? So check it. Well, yeah, check it out. No. But I was looking for it. Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. No. Okay. I'll have to check on that. Yeah, so where am I? How long have you been thinking of a cookbook? I think I always, as a kid. Oh, wow. No, I don't think I always knew I was going to do a cookbook, but I think as like, you know, like I said, like, you know, it started with like, when I made that decision, I'm going to be a comm major. I want to be storytelling and whatnot. Yeah. I think that solidified, like, how am I going to tell stories? So what are the different mediums of doing it? So I started on a Google Doc. Very cool. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to start writing it, you know, and like whatever happens, you know? And I had this like stark belief. I'm like, there's like 6 billion people on this earth. Clearly somebody's going to think this is kind of a dope project. And if not, like, then you know what? Like, we'll figure it out. There's that delusional confidence, because the other part of me would be like, oh, there's so many like Asian American cookbooks out there. Like, and you're in your own way. I would stop myself. Obviously not. I think that's why, you know, like you say, like, there's part of me that's really delusional that comes in. When I make really big decisions, I never know how naive I truly am until later, when people like bring that up. Like, for example, I was like, what is a book? It's images and writing. Okay. How hard can that be, you know? And I'm the type of person, like, I build as I go. Like, I don't, and this is one thing I've learned about myself that can be very powerful. Like, I'm like, I see myself as this thing that and this is why I got so much in trouble back in the day. It's because I'd be like, woo, this looks shiny. Let's go, you know? And I would be in these situations like, oh goodness, if I only put a little more thought into it, I won't be in this situation, you know? Yeah. But I think there's parts of me that's just still like that, very optimistic, like, what's the big deal, you know? And I always think it's the optimism comes in because I'm like, the good will always outweigh the bad. Ooh. Yeah. Like, what's going to happen? I waste my time. Even if it's a failed project, lessons, right? Yes, because I have so many failed projects that have never come to existence, you know, things that were in the works that never got out there. Like, I have so many of them, you know, like,
And I've learned that, you know what, those skill sets can be transferable to the next thing.
Absolutely. And when did you realize that, though? Transferable skills.
I think I always knew that.
Wow.
Because I remember, like I said, I wasn't good at school, but I always knew I was like a creator or like an artist, and I just haven't figured out like what was my secret sauce, like what was I gonna do. And so I was like, instead, like this decade of my life in my 20s, I was like, this decade is gonna be dedicated to collecting skill sets. So wherever there was skill sets that needed to be collected, your girl was there.
That's wild. So I probably learned that through probably Gary Vee.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Tim Ferriss, yeah. The whole model of like creating content and then chopping it up for smaller bits and pieces, like social media, that came from Gary Vee for sure. But the drive to make something of yourself came from Tim Ferriss probably. And there comes a point where like, I don't need to listen to this stuff anymore. Like you're learning so much just by doing it.
Yeah.
So how did you find a publisher, and like what was that whole process like? Is it easy or easier than you thought, or?
So, you know, I think I have to like give it up to my partner. Really helped me. So like I said, 6 billion people. And one thing I always did is like, anytime you're starting something new, you just got to blast it out there. You got to talk to everybody. When they ask you how you're doing, I'm writing a book.
Was there any part of you that felt like, oh, I don't know if I can say, like when you introduce yourself, like when I introduce myself, I'm more okay with saying, like, you know, depending on who I'm talking to, podcaster, but there was a point where like, oh, everyone has a podcast. What makes me special, right? Or whatever it is. Did you ever feel like that imposter syndrome? Yes, and I did. But then I also know my type of, like, it was a way for me to keep myself accountable. Because if I say I'm going to do something, social pressure, yeah. Yes, and you know what? Check in on you, like, so Sam, how's that? How's the book? You know, it was accountability on my end, and it was more of like, you know what? I was like, you know what? The more I talk about it, I'm gonna meet some people who are gonna be excited about it, want to be on my team. You know, like you know. And I had met my designer a year before, and you know, she was very interested. We were both in the Bay Area, and creativity in the Bay Area is like tech. So like it was really hard for me to meet creative folks, you know. And then a year after I saw her, because I hosted a women's event, and she was there. And she asked me about my book, and she's like, hey, and she's so talented. She worked at Nike, she worked at Apple. So she was the designer for like that caliber. And so we ended up getting together, and then, you know, in a year we cranked this thing out. And the reason why it looks the way it does is like, you know, obviously, you know, I was very hands-on. We shot everything in her apartment kitchen. We were just so, she was everything I wasn't, you know. She's really complimented you really. Oh, absolutely. And I was just this idea, like blah blah, like, you know, just like all over the place, but also very energetic. I'm naturally I'm a marketer, you know, like I love being out there. I love talking about my stuff, you know, like I'm just that's just how I am, you know, like and she's more reserved, so it was just like the perfect combo. So I honestly like attribute a lot of melting pot to her. I had 2 other women who were editors. We were all female team. I love that. Wow. And you know, they, you know, like, and that's why I say, like, honestly, I write like a second grader, and I wrote a book, and I just really want people to hear that one day, because if you're thinking like you can't do something, there's people who are going to supplement the shit that you're bad at, and you really got to spend time on you're really good at and hone in on that. Yeah. And just recognize that there are people who would believe in your vision and be like, yeah, she sucks at that, so I'm gonna help her out. And it's all gravy, baby. That's so funny. Yeah. Tell me more about this event, because that's another transferable skills, event planning, right? So like, where was the seed? Maybe just you wanting to meet more creatives, but like, it's not easy planning an event. So how did that process go? So I had another event friend, and she's amazing. Her name is Rochelle. She does events for Google no longer, but she's very great. And we both came together because we were like, you know what? It's really hard for us to meet people, and not just meet people, but because we're in the Bay Area, people are always like, there's so much identity in what you do.
and less on like, you know, I felt like I get stimulated when we're talking about deep shit, you know, like where you see yourself going, like what is your struggles in your life right now, like how can we help, like, you know, finding that type of community is really difficult. So we're trying to figure out, okay, how can we like get there faster? So we decided we're just going to throw like a, you know, a small event, invite our network, and then have people come together. But I think at the core of, you know, event planning, like I said, remember back in the day, like my parents, we didn't like do the typical, like we're eating dinner all together and everything. I always wanted those things for myself. Yeah. I always wanted community. I wanted a big family so that I could always like talk to brothers and sisters and la la la. You know, I wanted that so bad in my life. And so many spaces I was part of were never meant for me to be in, but I would like push myself to be in it. Like case in point, I was in like a like adults group in China, and I remember when I first got there, like everybody already had their groups and everything, but I was like, you know what, girl, you're gonna come back every single week, because even if it's hella awkward for you, you are gonna do it. And you know what, I remember sitting there and be like, ha 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 ha, like acting like I knew their inside jokes, but I didn't. But it's like, you know, naturally, you know, people after a while, like if they see you trying so hard, they're going to adopt you, you know? Aww. So that's the one thing I've learned about myself is like, I go to networking events all the time by myself, and I will always like push myself into places, like push myself into conversations.
It's a muscle, right?
It's a muscle, and and that's why I'm like, you know what, if we can recreate those type of experiences for people where it's easier for those natural conversations to come up, the spaces to have those things, like how can we organize a space to create that?
So is it a common activity? What's the glue that curates meaningful relationship or meaningful conversations?
I think it starts with, like, for me, I think it comes with a place of vulnerability. Yeah. It comes from a place where you're able to share something, and you know, but it's also like you have to be
as the host. You taking the first step with that, or
I don't know if so how we carried at these events where we would get the idea was that we bring a bunch of girls together that may or may not know each other, and I brought these cards. And I would write like really deep questions, like, where do you see yourself going in 5 years? What is your biggest struggles? Like, why, like, what is your favorite activity and why? Like, really, like, they're like almost like journal prompts. Yeah. They really get the conversation. It's like, you know, because I also recognize, like, you know, sometimes people don't even realize they want to go deep, but they do. I genuinely feel like, not everybody, but, you know, it's a hard place. You know, some people, like, you know, not everybody wants to, but one thing I recognized when I was like meeting people from all walks of life, and I did solo traveling too, and like when I was talking to people, I noticed like people just want to be seen and they want to be heard. And I always was like, you know what, like I naturally lean into things that if you're very passionate about something, I don't care what it is. If it's about like dog walking, or if it's about like, you know, I don't know, creating the best jelly bean there is, or like, I don't know, something really random, or like I have an antique store and I love it so much, and you talk about like the brass from 1871, but if you're super into it, I will go in there with you because I just find it fascinating, you know? And so I think it's like giving people space to be themselves, and really like, so when you ask those type of questions, it will naturally go back to the things that people really care about.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I agree. What I could probably sense, and we're probably going to get to the Thirsty Dumpling eventually, but like throwing cooking parties can do that. Like doing a common activity, whether it's pottery or cooking, whatever it is. I think naturally conversation usually happens around that. Yeah. And we're creating them. So how was it after the cookbook was published? Was it like, did you throw out ideas of like, I want my book in these stores on these platforms, or was that part of the publishing company?
Yeah, so it's part of the distribution where like I got picked up by Target, Barnes and Noble.
Wow. But like, are they actively seeking out new books, or like, is it a two-way thing? Like,
yeah, I don't know how they do it.
Okay.
But when we launched, so I'm through this platform that I'm in. They basically pay. I think this is how it works. I think they're paying all these like wholesaler. We got these new books. Does anybody want to take a few of them or whatever? And so I think it was, I didn't even expect to be in any of these platforms. Like, I thought it was like Amazon's a win, you know, like just getting on Amazon would be really great. So that people can buy it from Amazon. I was even scared to buy 50 copies of my book because I was like, damn, it's going to be hella embarrassing.
Like if people were to buy it off you?
Yes.
Okay.
I was scared to do that. And then, and it was crazy because the first month was just wild. We were the #1 new release book. It was crazy the first month of sales. Obviously it's died down since then. Totally okay with that. But
it's not going away, right?
It's not. It's my work. I see everything as an artwork, you know, like I see everything as like artwork. It's archived and we are good to go. But where am I going with this? See, like my brain goes so fast. I have to keep track.
Never thinking like that it'd be on the shelves of like Barnes and Noble and Target. Rest in peace, Barnes and Noble. But,
yeah. Are they done?
I remember going to the Barnes and Noble across the street from Pequod's on Elston because they were closing out. Oh. So I don't know if they're closing out everywhere, but yeah, that link was also broken too.
Oh no! Okay, good to know. Oh my goodness. Well, I guess it's only Amazon. Thank you, Daddy Bezos.
So not you know, having an expectation of where it's going to land and maybe being surprised by the reception of the book. Mm-hmm. What was, I guess, how did you like just enjoy it all? Like how was it well received on your end?
So that was the first time I learned. So it's crazy when you're building a book. So I was doing it basically almost for like 2.5 years before we even launched. And then there was another like 3 months. I gave myself everything. Like, you know what, girl, you need to market. So I learned how to, that was like kind of my first, because I was also, my comms degree was also marketing. So I learned a lot of like little things here and there. And I was also, fun fact, I was actually, I did the marketing for Chick-fil-A in college.
Oh.
Yeah, so I had like little learning experiences about marketing and what that could be. So I started like learning how to like do that, and so I tried to like for 3 months nonstop. I was like marketing, and I was like pitching myself to local retailers.
Okay. So cold calls, in person, social media,
all the above,
DMs,
all the above. Yeah, all the above. And then this is why I think this is great that I had that experience, because now that I'm doing my Thirsty Dumpling, I'm applying everything and more to it.
Transferable skills.
Yes, completely. You know, and I didn't even know back in the day that there was these things called ads where you could pay for ads. So everything I did was organic.
Wow. And
now I look back on it and I'm like, wow, you know, I can't imagine what it would be like if I had more marketing dollars. And you know, so
so that's awesome. Amazing. I don't know what type of book. I'm sure I'll write a book one day, whether it's like a photo journal book or
I love that.
whatever.
Coffee book.
Coffee books.
Ooh,
I love that.
Yes.
Over there's one of architecture where I'm bringing an architect on soon. She mid-century, really nice homes in Illinois. So that being said, what came next? Because you started cooking on news shows, or what was it? The YouTube channel that came next. What came next after that?
Yeah, so I had that opportunity to do this competition show on Food Network.
The grocery one?
Yes.
What's it called?
Supermarket Stakeout.
You're the second person that was on that show that I know. When the podcast first started, I forgot what year, but 2018 or 2019, we did an episode in his backyard. You can hear planes flying overhead.
No way!
And his side
so far.
side
Look
hustle.
at how far we've come.
And he's actually living in LA, Simi Valley.
Oh.
But his side hustle, he was a restaurant or hotel chef for the Hyatt Group. Mm-hmm. And side hustle was barbecue, like smoked meats.
That would have been perfect situation for him. Because they had this big old grill.
Well, I found him because he was selling it on Schmiel. Schmiel, like where people can buy $7-8 meals and pick it up from your home, essentially. But it's home cooked meals, essentially. And he went all in and is killing it in Simi Valley with his barbecue. It's like Asian barbecue fusion too. And he won. I think it's 10 G's. Like he won. The sweepstakes.
That's amazing.
So tell me about that experience. Like what was that like?
Oh my goodness. I can't.
You ever think you'd be on a game show?
Absolutely. Yes. Yes.
Of course you did.
Yes. You know, that's the thing. My life is all about bucket lists. I have so much things on my bucket list, and I'm always just ticking them off as I go.
So were you aware of the show before then?
No.
Oh, so you were approached by a producer? Or?
Yes.
Okay.
On Instagram. Yeah.
Social media can be great sometimes.
Social media. I took Oprah's advice a long time ago. Oprah says this: if you basically you can get discovered. So I was like, I need to be on TV. So I'm like, how am I going to do that? Like, what am I going to do?
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's my main objective anymore, but I was I knew TV was in the cards for me at some point.
Well, that same chef made it to the barbecue show on Netflix.
Shut up.
I think he was runner-up. Yeah, his name's Logan Sandoval.
I need to watch. He just sounds like he has an amazing.
And you're right. I mean, you make it on some of these platforms. One, the money helps to expand your own business, but the reach or the marketing that you get just from being on these platforms. Oh, yeah. I don't think you can put a number on it.
No, and it's crazy because at the time that when I was approached with it was just I wasn't even working in food. I hadn't been working in food for a very long time. And I think that was a really hard thing for me because talk about imposter syndrome, because I was like, okay, I'm going to do the show. I hadn't cooked in a long time. I hadn't cooked for a whole year, really, because I was so busy. I was working. I was doing my cookbook. Yeah. As pre-launch, right? And I was doing all this stuff. And then here I got approached with it. And I was like, oh, yeah.
When the wave comes, though, you got to be ready.
When the wave comes, you got to be ready. And you got to be ready to, shoot your shot, And, I think the thing is, it's prior to that, I remember doing some, casting stuff before. Oh. And so I remember I was it's more about how, it's more how you present yourself. Okay. And so I really presented myself I'm going to be the underdog in this game. I said that, and I was I'm going to be the underdog here. I think, and my experience in restaurants, people always underestimated me. I was this short, very out there girl, and I think people always and I always found opportunities in difficult moments to really shine and be you know what, in this moment, you can't make that, I will make that. And and so I always knew that I would always I knew how to kind of storytell my story about how I came from, why I am the way I am, the way that I think, my philosophy on cooking. Yeah. And at the time I was I'm really big about teaching millennials how to cook. And I was also really big about taking classic dishes and putting a creative twist on it. Sure. So I really knew what I was about. And so that I think
that's your brand. That's your brand for at least going into the show.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I knew that.
That's good.
And then at the time I was still working a full-time job, and this is during the pandemic. So every day for 3 weeks, what I did was I self-taught myself, because that's what I learned in community college, or in I learned study habits, right? So, and I also know I can accelerate my growth.
Was this YouTube University? Where did you learn
No, not YouTube. Just a bunch of stuff. I would clip things and everything. I got myself back to basics. I looked back at my books and everything, and I was every day I'm gonna make 5 recipes every single day for 3 weeks until I get to the show.
So what were some things that you deemed necessary as basic?
Yeah. So, one, my biggest goal was to not look like an ass on national TV, like a fool. I was dude, I don't want to do anything stupid. Which, if you watch, there is a moment. I have one of those moments.
Is this YouTube? Is it on YouTube?
I don't know if it's on YouTube. And you know what? I honestly didn't think it was such a big deal when it happened. But then, people were definitely commenting on Twitter and whatnot. Oh. I put a blender on the ground. Yeah, but that's such a normal thing. I see that shit all the time. When I'm in Chinatown, we get shit done, So I didn't think it was such a big deal, but I ran out of space because it's, the one thing I always kept getting, and by the way, I made it all the way to the final round.
Wow.
And the one feedback I kept getting was she needs to be more tidy. And I think now I look back on it, every feedback, every professional job I've ever had, you're always great, but you're just you need to tidy or organize better. It's always the thing I've always gotten, And so I think it's funny I'm talking about it now because I'm man, that is such a common theme in my life.
Well, what do you think about it now?
You know what?
Is it accurate? Is it not accurate?
It's super accurate. Oh. I own it 100%. I own it on that thing. I was okay, cool. What do I got to do? Okay. But I think the thing I learned is in that moment when I was going through it and they kept saying that to me, I was hell no, I'm not going to concentrate on this, because it's going to take me more brain power to be organized than to cook you a good meal. And that's what I'm here to do. So I was very true to myself the whole time, up until the last round, And I think my mind was always because all the people that were there were either they had like restaurants, and then some of them have already been on other TV shows already. So I'm going up against these people that I'm like, yo, I already know like that I'm already up against so much, you know. But I made a pact with myself before I got on the show. I was like, I'm gonna be myself, and that the food is gonna be very similar to how I am and how I interpret food. So the good, bad, and ugly will come out. And I already know like the way that I marketed myself to Food Network was that I'm going to be the underdog, right?
Yeah.
So I already knew like
was that explicit to them?
that would I don't
or just how you wanted it to be perceived.
No, because I think that's the story of my life. So I was very genuine about that too. I was like, I know how I'm going to be perceived by other chefs. I know that I'm not an actual, like, I don't work in a restaurant right now. I'm not a chef. Like, and it was even hard for me to call myself a chef on the TV show. So, I kept talking to myself, and I have like inner monologues when I was cooking the whole time. It's like, girl, you got this, you know, like da 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 da. Like,
did anyone go with you during that process?
No, so it was during pandemic.
Yeah.
So I flew myself, and we had to quarantine ourselves for 3 days before we can actually or I think it was like 2 days. I'm not sure, but yeah.
So what was it? Where did you fall short to not making it to the very end?
Yeah, so I think what happened was, and this is a really great topic, I was thinking about it this morning when I was walking. I think now I'm learning about this is like, I think I had a really great mindset going into it.
Yeah.
I was just grateful.
Oh.
And I think that's where it got me. Yes. Because I think I was just grateful for the opportunity. I was just grateful to like at least get it, if I could just make it to the first round or just have my face shown in the first round and like be able to call that flag and screenshot myself out. That would be like the highlight of my career, right? And I operated with that mindset. But as I was doing it, and I kept everything I was doing, I was like, I'm just so grateful to be here. I'm so grateful to be here, and I can't wait to make it to the next. If I can make it to the next round, I'm gonna be so grateful. And when I got to the last round, I think it actually scared me. Like, shit, I cannot believe I'm in the final round.
I could win this thing.
Yeah, and you know, the two judges that time were people I've looked up to my entire, like, so much of my career. I watched Antonio, early days of Top Chef, Jet Tila. He's like extraordinary, like in Asian food cooking, and just love his vibes and whatnot. And I was just like, they're saying these great things about me. Like Antonio called me like the spirit animal of this whole show because like I did a meat. So I did a meat round. It was a meat lover round. I had no meat. And I basically used my imagination. I made tofu steaks. I took veggie patties and I made these ground meatballs and I put it on ramen.
That's so cool.
Yeah. And so there was like a lot of these I random, but then she's told me that she's like, if you told me it was a pork meatball, I would believe you. Okay. That's what she told me.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah. And so
close your eyes while you're eating this.
Yeah.
Like, tell me what that tastes like.
Yeah. So I had no meat and I made it to the next round. That was the first round, by the way.
Wow. What?
Yeah. And so I'm just like, I just like, and it was because I'm like saying, I was telling myself, I'm going to do the good, bad, and ugly. I'm going to represent myself. And I think part of myself is also this creativity part of me that like loves to like think of these like out of the box thinking and like just being like scrappy. Like, you know, like I channeled that person when I was in China. Like I didn't get these things. I made taco bar out of like Asian ingredients, you know, like that type of like limitation really pushed me to like be like, no, this is it. We're going to do something with this and like we're going to do it. So I think going back to being grateful, right?
Yeah.
It's just like, I'm just grateful to be here. I'm just so grateful to be here.
Amazing.
You know, amazing. And then the last round, I remember my brother's like, hey, I saw you. You weren't even running as hard as the other guy. You weren't, because I was already in that moment. And that's where I realized, like, you know what? Moving forward, you have to have a winning mentality wherever you go. Like, it has to be for the win, you know? And I was just like, you know, and I noticed because, like, you know, I was just like, I think I was just so grateful, and I was like, I'm just, you know, I'm going to take my time. I'm going to do that. And I look back on it, I was like, the whole challenge was to make something with nuts. And what I did was, and this is, there was a bag of peanuts there, and the other contestant ended up taking it. But I saw it, and it never occurred to me that I should use that. But that's the round. It's nutty. And I took the chocolate bar with the hazelnuts, which, you know, as you know, with chocolate bars and the hazelnuts, it doesn't have the same, like, It won't have the nutty flavor, and that's the whole challenge. And then at the end, I grabbed a pistachio ice cream, but again, I didn't cook it, right? So me just really getting the state of like, I'm just so grateful to be here.
Yeah.
I like, if I don't win, it's fine.
Came off lazy.
I don't know if it was lazy.
Or you threw in the towel prematurely, or
I think subconsciously that's what I did. I subconsciously thought like, you know what? I'm just grateful to be here. Like, you know, like instead I should have really got in there and zoned out.
It's okay to do both though, right?
It's okay.
There's a balance because you are grateful
but
to be there.
But that's what got me through the first 2 challenges. So that's why I'm not upset.
Yeah.
I'm not. And you know what? The guy who won, he is amazing. He's a great chef. Like, honestly, hats off to him in so many ways. I think what I mean by for me is like, I should have gave myself that fair chance of really like getting into that zone and be like, I could win this.
Yeah.
Instead of being like, I'm so grateful. You know, and so I think that's what it taught me. So now sometimes when I'm like if I'm in another situation like this again, which honestly, I don't know if I want to do another competition show. That was just a lot, you know? I think I want to have a winning mentality.
Yeah.
Like when I'm leaving, what I set to come here for, we're going to get it.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
And after that, what came, was YouTube next? Did you feel like I want to be on this vessel, this media, this I want video now. I like that. You know, there were some aspects of being on that TV show that I liked. I want to recreate that for myself.
Yeah. Okay, so this is like the funny part, and I always say rejection. What is it? Rejection is redirection? Yeah. So the reason why I started a YouTube channel was not because it was something like I actually thought of or whatever. I thought in 2020 and 2021, I got approached by a big network to do some shows on their to create like micro clips of cooking videos on their channel. On their on their website and everything.
Oh, not like Tastemade.
No.
We watch that all the time.
Yeah, we watch it all the time. It wasn't. And I'll try to be...
Sure.
Yeah. Try to be like, I don't know.
Discreet, exactly.
But basically, we went through a whole year of like negotiating and going through everything.
Oh, wow.
To me producing all of the show. Because at first I had a producer and then they're like, no, you know what? We're changing. You got to get your own you got to produce it. So I was like, okay, fuck it. Yeah, let's do it. And then you were still willing to? Yeah, I was 100% because I was like, this could be my big break. And I think that's the thing about my life is I always think that this is going to be my next big break. But I have
That's a lot of pressure.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I think.
But excitement too.
It was so exciting.
Yeah.
I didn't give a shit. Like, you know, you can run me to the ground, but if this becomes a thing, I'm gonna be laughing, right? You know. And so I think I was like, yeah, whatever. And we were negotiating because I already thought that the contract was going to be signed before we started producing, and I was getting very close. So I self-funded a lot of it to start off with, and then it got to the end where we couldn't even get to a contract of signing when I actually produced and filmed. Luckily for me, I had really great friends who helped me film everything, who really were I rented an Airbnb. I did all the logistics and everything. We shot it in 2 days nonstop, literally waking up super early all the way to 1 or 2 a.m. in the morning, shooting 10 episodes. Yeah, batching it because I'm self-funding this, right?
Yeah.
And then I'm like, but I had faith that something would happen, whatever it was. And then I think that's the moment where it's you just take a chance on yourself, and you don't know. And at any point, I could have been like, no, I don't have the contract signed or whatever. But I had people in my corner that believed in me. I was like, Sam, we're just gonna do this because we think that this is gonna be great for you. Yeah. And then I was like, you know what? I think I know how to produce shit. I think I know how to organize things. So I organized everything, and but anyways, long story short, found out that this network was no longer going to continue. And so what ended up happening was, and I knew that it was really, when I was emailing them, they had took 3 weeks to just change one episode. And I just knew something was off. And I was like, okay, you know what? I'm following my intuition right now. So I just emailed them hey, what is happening on the back end? What on my end can I help to solve these issues? Sure. I'm thinking, do I need to find somebody to actually edit these videos? What is the stopping force? And so when they finally told me, they're like, okay, but you have 2 options. You can still stay with us, but you will put it on a streaming platform, or you can just take your content and go. And it was one of the most difficult. I think that was one of the most difficult times in my creative career, because I put so much emphasis, like, this is going to be my big break. This could be it, you know? And in that moment, I realized, like, you know what? I trusted myself, and I was like, you know what? I rather keep the content for myself. I rather keep it to myself. And, you know, I didn't get a positive experience working with them anymore. So I was just like, you know what? And that taught me one thing about, like, advocacy for myself in creative spaces and in business and anything is, like, if you want the ball to move, you got to roll it. And you got to push for it. You gotta go, you know? And so I recognized, like, how much of that's when I learned about being an advocate for myself. So even now when I do casting or anything, I'm my biggest advocate, you know, for everything. Anyways, so it didn't work out. And then I was, like, faced with all this unedited shit. And I was like, well, what am I going to do with it? And I was very upset for 2 months. I was, like, really upset. Like, damn, like, this is so embarrassing. Now I'm going to start now I'm just going to have to, like, put it somewhere, you know? And someone told me, it's like, hey, just put it on YouTube. And I was like, all right, I'll put on YouTube. And by the way, this is the flop I'm talking about. Of all the things I've done, this is one of the flops I look in my life, is these videos. They didn't perform well on YouTube. If you look at it, it's like 100 views or whatever.
But these are the first videos you put on YouTube? Oh, you got to give yourself more grace, because it takes time.
Yes.
It takes time and consistency.
Yes, which once I did the 10, I was like, this is it. And I think that the thing about me is, like, I always learned how to close chapters too.
Well, that's the thing. It's like they live there forever.
Yes.
And you're still in the realm of cooking and food, and you have something to refer people to if they wanted to learn more.
And that's where I got that, like, aha moment. I was, like, sitting really, like, upset for myself for 2 months. And then I was like, at one point, someone's like, just put on YouTube and get over with it, you know? And I think people are getting sick and tired of me.
You can visit it later if you want to. Right?
I could, right? And I was just like, it was killing my soul to think that I was in this place where I was like, I almost had my break. And the way that it was handled, and I realized that was firsthand showbiz for me. To learn, like, showbiz is, like, very shaky.
They can just pull the rug out from under you.
They can. And that's why I'm like, everything that I go through, I'm always like, my pain will never go in vain. First of all, I will learn everything, and I will, like, use it for the next thing. I will be smarter of it. I will be able to tell this knowledge to other folks that are going through the same thing. And so I didn't end up doing it. So then I ended up doing that. I hired an editor, uploaded, created all my creatives and whatever, and did it myself. And I put it out there, and I was like, okay, cool. And I think that was more for me, because what happened was I was holding on so much.
To that, right?
There was so much closure. Yeah. I didn't care how it performed at that point. That's
key too.
I didn't care anymore.
Yeah.
I didn't care. I released myself of thinking that was my break. Because I started realizing that I was in control of what was happening, even though, like, I was in this situation. And what it taught me was that, hey, I learned how to produce something, you know? So now I know how to do all the logistics and all these different things, what the time frame was. I was, you know, when we were shooting those things, I was also washing dishes at the same time, before and after, and changing my outfits. I had to get all my outfits ready.
Oh, you had that many fits in one session.
10 outfits. You know, and this is done in 48-hour period, you know? 10 outfits, scripts. I wrote my own scripts.
So I'd be, like, fried after, let's say, if I had another guest come in, like 2-3 episodes, like, I'd be fried.
I was fried, and I was cooking, and then it's like, you know, and I was cooking, and I would.
But you're not just the star, you're like the dishwasher, the plumber, the electrician.
Yeah. I mean, I had friends who were helping me in between things, but there are certain things, like, you know, if you wanted to chop a certain way or whatever, and you also have to get, like, a list of the next items that you need to have, the shot list, the food, everything needs to be ready. So you're prepping all these different things. So I learned how to do that, essentially, maybe on a smaller scale, but now I can say that I know how to do it, right? I think that was a really tough moment for me.
But formative.
Another humble pie moment for me. I'm really glad that I did it. And you know what it taught me? It taught me that the fact that someone was looking at me like that they even approached me with this means that potentially there could be other opportunities that someone could see me in this light, right?
You know, going back to Tastemade, I'm sure a lot of those people started on YouTube.
Potentially,
right?
yeah. And they're so amazing. Like I think I follow. I always watch their stuff, and I'm just like I love that association. I like know them, and like they're doing so amazing. And I just and you know what I always say, like if you see someone else who's kind of like started where you started from,
right.
that's like that's something telling you that could be you too.
Yeah. No one will really start paying attention until you like made it, and then. You know, go back to some of those channels that have blown up, but like go back to their earlier videos, and it's like you see growth.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't be too critical of those 10 videos.
I'm no longer.
I haven't seen them.
Yeah.
But the thumbnails. Whoever did that, the editor.
I made it. I edit it.
That's a skill that takes time to learn too.
So I didn't know. So that's the thing. It's like I was like I have to produce it. I was trying to save costs on my editor. So I was like I'm gonna create you all the creatives, the logos, and everything. And I learned to do it on Canva.
But there's a way about thumbnails, whether it's like big smiling faces, big font, big text, easy to read, nice poppy colors. It's because attention is hard to come by these days, and you have to grab someone's attention. Yeah.
I mean, just learned it like
Good for you.
I'm grateful for it.
Where was the seed for Thirsty Dumpling?
Yes, now we're finally getting here.
Now we're here. We're in present day.
Yes, present day. No, I love these conversations, by the way. I think for the where do I go with this? How did I come with Thirsty Dumpling? So last year when I moved out to Chicago,
what brought you here?
Yeah, a lot of things. Brought me here. Well, I was in my last job and I realized, like, you know what? I don't know. And when I was in the Bay Area, I was like, I'm living in the Bay Area just to live here. I mean, in order to live here, I need to work this job. And it's not to say that the job wasn't good or anything like that. It was just like, I didn't see that future for myself, right? So if I don't see a future for myself and my lease was coming up, I was like, then what am I going to do next? And so I was like, well, I had a girl in my a coworker of mine, we had lunch together, and she was like talking about her tenant, and I was like, wait, hold up, you have a tenant? I was like, you're the same age as me, how come I don't have a house yet? Like, I literally said that to her. Yeah. But it was like, we had that relationship where I was just like,
it's like, how do I get there?
Yeah. And she's like, Sam, it's a lot easier than you think. So she's like, you just got to get pre-approved, you start looking at the places you want to look at and whatever. So I was like, all right, cool. And then that was a time where my grandmother's health was declining. But we didn't know she was going to pass away. And I didn't know that I was staying so hard. I was staying in the Bay Area for family. I didn't know it then, but that was maybe like, I really truly believe, because the minute my grandmother passed, I booked a ticket. To Chicago, and I got a real estate agent, and I got a pre-approved loan. And I was like, at the end of the day, I showed her 6 or 7 places. I'm like, hey, at the end of the day, I'm going to put an offer on something. I don't care what it is. I'm just going to do it, And I never even been in my neighborhood, by the way.
A place in Chicago or a place in LA? Or
in Chicago.
Okay, wow.
So I'm like, yeah.
Without even stepping foot?
No, I've stepped foot in Chicago.
Oh.
I stepped foot in Chicago, but I had never really been in my area.
Oh, wow.
I've never been in my area, but when my real estate agent asked me, like, what do you like to do? I'm like, I like to eat. I like to have a good, like, I like to eat. I like to, I like neighborhoods, like, I didn't have much, but I was like, I don't really care. Let's just do it, And because in 2015, I had a really good experience in Chicago with my friend. And I remember when I had a great time. I had a really not accurate picture of Chicago living that I'm doing now, but we were going out every night when we were in Chicago, and it was like such a fun vibe. And I was like, yes, Chicago's so cool. And so I was like, one day I was like, I'm going to come back here in a different capacity. Just don't know what it's going to look like. So, so I already put it out there. Right. So when everything was happening, I was like, all right, cool. We're coming. We're going to do this. So I came out here, and then when I finally was like, okay, then I got it. And I was like, all right,
just like that.
Then I got to come out here, and I got to be, And I think back of my mind, I was like, I wanted a lower cost of living.
So you just bought a place?
For myself.
Knowing that it would pay off in the end.
Yes. It's also this feeling of like, I think this is where I'm always talking about this whole like feeling of like never fitted in. I realized like a lot of times I was in places where, you know, I always had to like, I had to be like, I always like when I'm in my own place in my own situation or whatever. And like, I just felt this sense of like, I could be whatever I wanted to be. I could just like pick up my computer in the middle of the night and just like doing these things. I could be like, if I want to dance in the middle of the night, cause I'm like, you know, having this like moment of like, you know, I'm feeling good and I want to dance. I want to do this, you know, I just wanted to have that space for myself. And I was always like, you know, I knew like Bay Area, like the cost of living was getting so high. And I was just like, I'm just basically trying to live here. I'm trying to just like pay for the pay to exist, you know. And I was like, and I would love to be in a more creative environment. You know, my brother was already here, and I was just like, you know what, let's just do it. Let's figure it out. Okay. And I think that's the thing, like my life is like, I've always been in these situations, like I talked about when I was a kid, that I was always in these random situations, and I just had to like, with what I've make it happen, you know? And so I think, I know like when I tell people the story, they're like, oh my gosh, how could you do that? But it's because it's like, it's this idea of like, I can make anywhere home. You know, in my book, I always say I learned that you can live anywhere with just 2 suitcases. And so I learned that early on. And so now I look at like, I'm not attached to locations. I'm just attached to people. And, you know, and that's that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. And since then, have you enjoyed your time here?
I absolutely love it. I absolutely love it. I know I'm meant to be here right now in this point in my life.
Yeah. You're well traveled though.
Yeah, I would say so. But it's crazy because when I was like 18, my first flight was when I was 18.
Oh, wow.
And then like the last, like in my 20s, I just kept going everywhere. Yeah. Yeah.
So
yes.
Back to the Thirsty Dumpling.
Back to Thirsty Dumpling. Yes. Where should we go with this?
Well, where did you discover the idea of like, and it's, to be clear, it's a kit to make your own dumplings?
Yes.
Okay.
So it is, Thirsty Dumpling is basically a dumpling experience that can be delivered to your doorstep.
Wow.
So think of it like, you know, you order it, I can send it to you, and you just add a pound of meat to the recipe, and everything else is there for you because everything's activated by either moisture or hydration, like water, hot water. Okay. And it's like a party kit in a box. So, you know, it's funny that we're like really reminiscing about like my whole life right now. I just think everything.
This is the experience you're trying to cultivate,
This
right?
is exactly what it is. It's crazy. I never even thought about it, but I'm really starting to think about it because there's so many things I think about. So this dumpling experience, like, so it's like birthed out this feeling of like, you know, we're like, a lot of my friends are always like, a lot of my millennial friends were always like, man, like I really want to like host more at home, but I always make charcuterie boards and like, it's not a real meal or it's like whatever. And like, you know, it's like, and a lot of people I remember, so when I was working, I was actually sourcing a lot of employee engagement events for my own company during the pandemic. And then during that same time,
were you in tech at that point?
I was not.
Okay.
I was not in tech.
Okay.
I was actually at a VC firm at the time.
I consider that techie though.
Is it? Okay.
I think so.
Yeah.
I guess before Leanne's event, I didn't know how techie Chicago was.
Yeah, I didn't. You know what? I didn't realize that until I came here too.
Okay.
But yeah, that's what I was doing on my day job, and then on the side, I was getting all these opportunities because I just launched my cookbook, and then I had friends who were in events experiences in their tech companies, and they're like, "Hey, we need to come up with employee engagement events. Do you want to do cooking classes?" So I started doing cooking classes. So I saw both perspectives, one from sourcing the vendor and one from actually being a vendor. And I always thought like, damn, people get really annoyed when you have a cooking event and you tell them to buy their own ingredients, first of all. And so anyways, so that is one of the, like, maybe
we saw at home cocktail making events during the pandemic too.
A lot of that, right? Yeah. And it was one of those things that, like, you know, I guess in some ways people are still thinking, could this be just like a pandemic thing, right? And that's the thing I struggle with too. It's like, okay, how do I make this like less pandemic-y or whatever? But I think one thing I always knew was like, when I started teaching these dumpling classes, right? So I started getting a lot of these like random tech companies, Fortune 500 companies sourcing me to be like, and it was all word of mouth. They're like, hey, can you teach us class?
And I wouldn't feel bad charging a little more for these corporate companies.
Exactly. So I was like teaching these cooking classes. And then at one point, you know, I remember like I was teaching dumpling classes. I was like, you know, I have like a roster of like, these are the things I do. If you want to like customize it, we can do other things. Cool. So then one of them is dumplings. And I remember people would email me afterwards like, Sam, I cannot believe like you unlocked this experience for me. I always thought it was really intimidating, unapproachable, and all these, you know, but now I feel confident. In fact, not do I feel confident, I'm going to do it this weekend or whatever. And so that was like a thing where I was like, like, and it's like, you know what? It's like making dumplings isn't life changing.
Is there any nostalgia to this? Like, did you make, because I've never done it with my, you know, family at home. Was that a thing for you back in the day, or?
Yes, I watched my mom make dumplings when we were kids, and like I said, my mom was not she didn't like cooking. She thought of it as a chore, but I saw her like dumping random things into a bowl and making it, and they like the way that she shaped them were like hella messy and shit. But like, yeah. I'm really rubbing on my mom right now.
Roast.
Yeah, but you know, I'm not gonna lie. Like me and my mom laugh about this all the time because, you know, there's something to be said about just getting food to the table. And what I've learned from her, the way that she cooked and the way that she made dumplings, is like it's all gonna taste the same. It don't matter once it hits the pot, it's good. So I think I learned, for me, dumplings were very unapproachable. And when I moved to China, I remember I had this moment of like, I miss my mom's dumplings. Oh, wow. And so I went to recreate it. And I remember it was like a 5-year-old memory. I was 25 at the time when I was in China. And I recreated with all the memories in my head, which made me realize like, damn, you know what? This is how, that's why I preach heavily on intuitive cooking, because that's the way the rest of the world cooks outside of the US. It's all intuitive. You know, like when your mom throws like
not
oil,
as regimented with recipes, and
we don't do recipes.
Quantities and,
it's all about the feeling, you know? So that's another thing I realized, like, you know, so in my cooking classes, when I was teaching online, I would teach people how to be intuitive with their cooking.
Because some people look at that as like the lazy way. When as a teacher, like, oh, what do you mean? Just do it as you feel it.
Yeah. But I would teach, so I would have a regular recipe, and then each step I would be like, hey, this is how you can customizable to make it your way. Oh. And this is how you can simplify it, or you can make it more extravagant.
So there's a baseline, yeah.
There's a baseline. Yeah. So when I was coming up with Thirsty Dumpling, I just had this idea on April 7th, 2023 when I was on the phone with my mom.
What?
Yes.
It's that new.
It's very new. Oh, wow. That's what I'm trying to tell you. Like sometimes, like this is where I get myself in the trouble. And then the 2 weeks after, I incorporate. Like I got a then company. It's real. Yeah, and then it became real. And I had that moment for a month. I was like, shit. Like I don't know if I want to do this now, but I already did it, so I got to keep going. You know. And so back to
you incorporated.
Yeah. So I got that, and then I was like, all right. So I started doing it, and I was like, because last year when I tried to do my chili oil, I was like,
you were making your own chili oil too?
Yes, I was making my own chili oil. And that was the reason why I even started doing any food. Is like my mom always told me I was like making chili oil for many years, and she's like, this is the secret sauce. This is the thing. And my mom was always convinced that I needed to have my own sauce line one day, because she's like, you don't realize. And that's the thing I learned about my mom, is like she always taught me, you don't value the creativity you have, and that is why like. This is like you trying to like do all this other stuff. That's not where it is. It's in your head. Like you need to value it more often. But then I learned that it's a really hard business to do, especially when you have things that are like not shelf stable. You know, you put yourself in these double binds with like, you know, logistics, and like, you know, I had them in jars.
Start small, right?
Start small, but
so shout out Shiley. They started from their apartment.
Oh, really?
Right, and then it's the communal kitchens.
Oh, okay.
Right, the opportunities will present themselves, as you've already known. Yeah. Over time. Yeah. But keep it like Professor Pizza, apartment pizzas, right? It's just like over time.
Yeah, and that's the thing. But that it wasn't compelling for me to do it. Sure. Like, I think I was always trying to give it a shot, and so I did a test around, and I was like, this is not it. Sending chili oil, whatever. So I was like, can I dehydrate everything and then turn it and add hot oil? And then that way I can save on shipping costs, and I can make it lower price for everybody else. So that's when I learned about dehydration. And then long story short, when I made dumpling kits, I was like, how can I make this more accessible? How can I give the power back to the people when they want to make it, how they want to make it, and whatnot? Then I thought I also thought about myself, because, I'm self-funding this and in this moment, and I'm thinking, okay, like how can I make sure my resources are like, I'm going to be able to sell all these kits. Yeah. And I thought, I realized like I needed time, because if I make like an actual like dumpling, right, you only have a specific time unless you're doing frozen, right? So, and then it made me also think about like, how can I make an experience out of it? Like, how can I do all of that? So then I started I've developed the whole recipe in my kitchen. And another thing that I think is really exciting that we're doing is we're doing video guides. And so back to like the part of when I was younger and I had a hard time focusing, and I learned in my early 20s that not everybody learns the same. So you can't just give people written instructions and think that they're gonna
QR code to a YouTube video of you guiding people through making dumplings.
That's exactly what it is. Yeah. We're doing 1 minute short form content. Nice. So that you can have a reference point. So if you feel stuck, you're able to scan it through the thing. Yeah. I was like, we're doing a lot of things that are really different in that sense. Like where, like I imagine, because like my mind is all over the place. One of the things that we're doing is like, we're actually doing like a poster manual. So it's actually like really like you can like look at everything as a whole, and then at each process it has a scanning of the code so that you can actually like lead you to it. So there's a lot of me in there, and there's a lot of intention of like me also wanting to create an experience that, maybe someone that maybe doesn't traditionally learn the same way as someone who doesn't like the classroom setting, for example, where they read the instructions and they understand it. I tried to,
think about that. Yeah.
Yeah. I tried to think about like, okay, like what other ways can we help someone learn? Yeah. So that is one of the things we're doing. And yeah, we're getting my samples back, and we're going to do a mass production on the actual, like the packaging. Wow. And now we're working with the co-packer. So, we're trying to like launch right before the holidays and really like,
What do you see with this though? Do you see, because a lot of the people that have come on, I see a lot of collaborations, especially locally. I wonder, like throwing a dumpling party with another collab. But I'm curious. Like, what other collabs could there be? Like I said in the DMs, like Chalet Oil, I'm sure. Yeah. They've collabed with a group that they met through their kitchen on onigiris.
Oh, I love onigiri. I actually had one of theirs. I was like, yes, thank you, Chicago.
Yeah. So I mean, the possibilities are endless. Yeah. I feel like, and it's almost overwhelming. So it's like, I guess just think about what the next step could be. Yeah. Like this pitch you just shared is practice for Shark Tank. Like it's like
I'm you know what? Never say never. I think the thing is like, and this is like so true to my character sometimes, that like I wish, not that I wish, but like I don't always think about like how to do things until I'm there. Like, and I'm starting to think about it, because now that I've actually got it took me
you've had practice, like you've had reps before, right? Repetition,
but like, even getting to the recipe to the right point, I was very nervous of it, and then getting to the, the packaging, we did so many like rounds and rounds and rounds.
At what point, coming to the point of like, that's good enough. It's not perfect. Yeah. Perfect's impossible, but like that's good enough to put it out there.
Yeah. Yeah, I had to stop myself at one point, because I was like, you know what, Sam, like it has to be good enough. You have to move, or else you're not going to hit the holidays. And even now I'm like, there's so much I still don't know. Like I could be hit with something I don't know.
But I think it's so valuable, so important that you actually put a deadline.
Yeah.
Because it creates some type of pressure.
I mean, I already delayed it 2 months.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I delayed it 2 months. I mean, and this is where my naivety comes in, right? When I first conceptualize this, I was like, in a month and a half I can launch this. Like I don't know what made me think that, but now I look back and I'm like, no, like that was really like, that was really like naive of me to think I could do something like that. But now I'm like really happy with what we've come up with for our first round of products.
That's amazing.
It's
you're
exciting.
You're in another realm, consumer packaged goods. It's
I know. I never like. It's so funny. I always said I didn't really want to be an entrepreneur.
What?
Yeah. Now that I think about it, it's kind of dumb that I'm saying this, right? I didn't.
Well, it's a very broad definition.
It's a very broad one, but this is the reason why I always saw myself as creator, like a creator coming up with the concepts and ideas and then executing on it. And I guess essentially that is an entrepreneur, right? But I just like even the idea of like calling myself a founder sometimes is weird.
What aspect of entrepreneur do you not align with?
It could be an insecurity of mine because I think of entrepreneurs as like these like gods, like the people are like killing it and doing all these different things. And I'm this like creative I'm very creative, and I am, I do.
Or is it a gender thing, a race thing, an age thing that like you when you think of entrepreneur, you think of a person, right? And like I don't align with that. And as you're meeting more individuals, more entrepreneurs, you're like, actually, we're all kind of the
same, a little wacky, right? You know what I think it is? It's because I've been thinking about this a lot recently. It's like, I realize so much of when I doubt myself now. And this is like, how I have these moments of delusional where I'm like, oh yeah, I'm going to kill it, And then there's moments where I'm like, you know what, like actually girl, like, because it's moments when I've actually tried to fit myself in certain situations, or like I was in environments where like, I was in these traditional environments where like, I didn't feel like I was thriving or whatever. I remember those moments, and like, like I was talking about organization, right? Like I've gone that's one of the things I've always gotten from feedback from people, like, you're great, but you need more organized. Like, I think about it, I'm like, man, can I actually scale on a big level because I'm just all over the place. My mind is all over the place, and or like the things I lack, like I still feel like I don't write the best, but I get the job done. ChatGPT, thank you. It's great. I see there's a lot. I'm very aware and very keen on the weaknesses that I have. Yeah. And I think sometimes I'm like, man, are these things are going to be the reason why I'm not going to be doing good? Or like the moments where I'm like, I rush into things, like where I'm like, I had the conviction about it, but then not looking at all the pieces, and then, so, and then I put myself in these situations. So like for me, I think, and I guess maybe these are things I need to get better at. These are the things I need to grow towards.
Or leverage other people to do it with you.
Exactly. Yeah. So and I always tell myself, it's so funny. I was like, if I ever do a business, I'm going to have to find a co-founder to do these things with me. I haven't, but I think that was meant to be, because I always tell myself I can only start something until I have somebody else doing it with me.
Well, and take your time with that, because once you get into bed with someone, it's harder to undo.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And at this point, it's like I've gone this far. I'm just starting to think like, do I need one in this point? And like maybe later on, but
and later on you can give a piece of your, a percentage if you want to.
Potentially. Yeah. Or, right now, like I'm just like, because I'm doing like, I'm learning things that I'm because I'm like, even recently I'm like, like numbers was not a thing for me, right?
I think it's important to know every role.
Yeah.
Until you find yourself stretched thin, and you have the resources to leverage other people to do it, because it's not worth your time. It's important to know how to do them, but it's not worth your time anymore, because there are higher level things to do.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I've learned that over time to like delegate, to like find people who are really good at something and not doing those things.
Yeah.
So yeah, like, so to your point with the whole like entrepreneur and things like that. And I think, when you say you're an entrepreneur, like I think there's this feeling of like, yes, you could be like also defining success for yourself, because you could be an entrepreneur, but you could also fail at it. As much as I run with like my bullhorns and like, yeah, let's do this, there's a part of me that's really scared of failing.
Yeah. But you failed many times before.
I do, but I also feel like I've done so many fails and flops to me that like I'm like, I don't want to keep telling people.
So it never gets easier, huh?
Yes. And I'm like, I don't want to keep telling y'all I'm doing this thing, and then I'm like,
because you seem like you're all talk.
Yeah, I do. Yeah. I'm scared of that. I'm scared of like, I'm also really scared of like one day like just burning myself to the ground to the point where I don't want to do anything creative.
And it goes like that too. And that's why the shoot I showed you, that was for fun. That wasn't a client, that's a friend.
Yeah.
So I guess one last question is just like, at this point in time, we started the conversation with acknowledging what seems like a well-balanced lifestyle. Have you been able to, because I know as as a hustler, an entrepreneur, it's hard to find time for your personal life, whether that's for
Mm-hmm.
friends, family, or a dating life.
Yeah.
And the second part of that question is, how much do you identify with what you do
Oh, that's so
rather
good.
than who you are, like what your essence is, right?
Yeah, that's so good. Okay. Let's go with the balance, right?
Yeah.
So I think this is like such a good question for like what I'm going through in this part of my life, because I finally recognized that I'm wired to like just be on all the time. Like it's just like my mind and whatever. I'm always like on. And what I've learned about myself is that there are moments where I can't do like like, you know how somebody's like can go to work and like work the whole
just
8 hours?
Shut it off.
Yeah, I can actually have a really productive 1 or 2 hours and do the work of 8 hours, but I don't know when that's coming. And this has been a really huge frustration for myself, because sometimes I'm like, you need to work, and I sit there and I'm like, this is not, it's just
Sure.
not flowing, you know, whatever. And there are other times where I'm like, whoa, it's like, it's almost to the point where I'm starting to feel like with balance time, I have this scarcity mindset about it, because I'm so scared. When am I going to be on? When can I capitalize it?
Oh, wow.
You know, and like sometimes like, and then I get really frustrated with people around me, because it's, if I'm in that moment, I don't know when it's going to come next. So I'm trying to like foster that space for myself. Like what makes me like, when do I feel the most comfortable? Yeah. So yesterday spent the whole day cleaning all day, and then at nighttime it finally flowed, right? And that is why I realized like this kind of works for me, because there are certain times where I'm like, I cannot work till 10. Like it's just a really hard thing for me. I like to do my walks. I like to do my journaling. I like to like listen to podcasts up until 10, and then that's when things flow.
Everyone's wired definitely differently, I think. But if you were to use like a broad brush stroke, it usually like the most creative like time is the first thing you do in the morning, is not giving bandwidth and energy to the most easiest mundane things. And it's allowing, and it's like usually before, what helps is like you're waking up before most people, and allowing your time, whether it's the dogs, the kids, your partner,
having that time for yourself,
or your day job. And it's just like, it's time for yourself.
Yeah, I think this is one thing I've also learned about myself. Like I think I mentioned earlier, it's like I go through really high highs and really low lows. And it's very contrary to like when people meet me, because I'm very like very positive and whatnot. But I have to like really like and I've gone through many like depressional phases in my life. And when it hits, and like that's why I need to spend a lot of time with myself, because I need to like listen to those podcasts. I need to like hear about the David and Goliath story over and over and over again in different shapes and forms in order for me to feel like, okay, I got this, you know, like, and so like for me, like I need time to balance, like to know that I have that time for myself, and like I'm not just being rushed into different things. And so that's where the balance is. Like me, I'm just training myself not to mask, because I used to mask and I used to be able to do it. I use adrenaline a lot. As soon as it's work time, even every email I wrote was a lot of adrenaline.
To avoid sitting in the thought or sitting in the emotions. Is just
to get things done.
Yeah. But like by overwhelming yourself with tasks, you're kind of avoiding what really needs to be done.
Right.
Personally, for me.
Yeah.
At least.
Yeah, it could be a form of escapism.
That's usually when I end up cleaning my place. It's just like, I should be actually doing something else.
Right. Yes. I don't know. It could be, you know, and that's something I should probably further explore. But yeah, I mean, I spent many years like using, what's that thing called? I used a lot of adrenaline to get things done. I play mind games with my head all the time to do each and every task, because like, and it's just like I'm finally able to talk about it, like because I recognize that most people don't have that same thing, like where they like be like, you know, I'm playing these like calendar games
to maintain like friendships, or at least like maintain, let's spend some time together, because you don't know when you're on or off, and unless you have a lot of entrepreneurial friends in a similar space or similar, you know, journeys, most people won't understand. And even if they understand, their lifestyles don't line up.
Yeah. And there are entrepreneurs who are like very great at like managing their time and skills, and like, I just happen to like really struggle with those type of things. And like, I'm just like finally open to like talking about these things like that I've been struggling with. And I think this is why I'm like, learning about so much about like balance in this point in my life. Like, how do I set up the environment to help me thrive, not just for work, but for my mental space, really.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So with identity then, I feel like my parents, they don't ask questions on what I do, so I don't really share. Right?
Oh, really?
They don't know the name of my podcast. They don't know any of that stuff.
Really?
And it's the opposite for my fiance, or Justine's parents.
Yeah. They love it.
Yeah, they love it, and it's appreciated. So that being said, like, I don't, when you introduce yourself to certain people, whether it's your friends or new friends or your parents, and it's like, it's such an easy way to like warm up to someone, is like asking what you do. But like, what do you think about, let's say you're going on a first date, or like a new friend, like how would you introduce yourself?
Yeah, like, I'm Sam, I just moved to Chicago. I really enjoy cooking, and I love, like, I think it's really like, that's what I always lead with. Like, and I don't even talk about cooking.
That sounds healthy.
I try really hard not to, because, I came from Bay Area, and that's what everybody says. Hi, my name is this. What do you do for work? And I know that's very exhausting, especially when you don't place value in always, or your identity in work, and people want to put that identity for you.
Well, I'm slowly learning about that, because when people see what I do, it's very validating. They're like, oh my God, you're hustling and you're doing all these things. Like, it feels good, but it's like, you don't want it to be just everything that you are, there's so much more to you than what you do.
Exactly. And what's really crazy, that I actually had this conversation with a friend before, that's also really, like, she's really successful in the CPG space. And we hang out all the time. I remember one time she told me, she's like, I really sometimes wish people would just address me as my name, and that's it. I mean, like, my name, and not ever talk about what I do, because it just starts this even place. We can actually like bond, but and so I was like, I've always learned, like, also asking your friends how they want to be identified, like, as like, do you want me to tell them that you do this or that? Because, sometimes it's like, they don't want to do the same elevator pitch that they do for their work, that they do for when meeting friends, there's a certain expectation, I think, when you lead with something else, right? But I think it's really crazy, because back in the day, I remember when I started the cookbook, I was like, I am never going to put my identity in what I do. Yeah, I was like, I'm never going to do that. I think when that whole like situation happened with that, like the contracts and everything, like, for my last thing, I think that's when I kind of shifted and realized, like, whoa, this could be a big thing. And that's why I think it burned me so bad. Yeah. And I'm trying to get back to that place.
Being identified with what could have been, right?
What could have been. Yeah, exactly. So now I'm trying to be like, how do I find an even place where, because the thing is, at the end of the day, I am just a creator, and I love thinking of ideas, and I love talking to people ideas, and like, just like, just like all of that. I love that. And so it's like, how do, and a lot of times with my friends, we don't actually talk about what we do, like, all the time. We just love, like, I just have a great time.
You just exist.
Because I'm actually very class clowny, as much as people don't, maybe you see it now, but I am very, like, I like to just like be, like, I just like to be, and I think it's kind of weird, like, now that I'm doing my own thing, I'm like, sometimes I'm like, man, these people could potentially like hook me up with like a event at their workplace, so I got to be careful.
It's the fine balance, right?
Yes, it's the fine balance and stuff. So I'm really trying to learn how to separate.
Funny enough, when I make your intro, I'm probably going to list some of those things, right? So it's like, I guess within the context, right? It's just within this space, I think it helps for people to know what you've done. But if they stick it out to the end, they'll hopefully learn so much more.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Where can people find you if you want to be found? Because I got nothing else, unless you want to.
No, I'm good. This is great. So you can find me on Insta It's Sammy Eats, SAMMYEATS. And then I also have Thirsty Dumpling. If you could show some love on that too, because I need some love. But yeah, I have, you can find me, I think my email's even listed. So yeah.
What's the website?
Website for my personal is sammyeat.com. For my company's name is thirstydumpling.com.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Sam, you're doing the damn thing.
Thank you. You too. I had such a fun time doing this.
Yeah, I surprised myself. I didn't know it as much as I thought I knew about you, I guess.
Yeah. I love it.
Here we are. So everyone else, thanks for listening. We just passed the 2-hour mark. And till next time, stay curious.
Stay curious.